You're listening to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show. So, as you can see, it's a little bit late. Last time we did a show on William Hookins and talked about his life and everything, and I was waiting for this shirt. I was really hoping that this shirt was going to come in time for it, and of course it didn't. It came in like, I don't know, a week and a half later or something.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, man. It was crazy.
Must have been that FedEx in
Yeah, right? Yeah, for anybody that doesn't know that's watching this and, you know, some of our friends around the country, around the world even, there's a FedEx office locally that's really been bad about delivering stuff. But you know what? I mean, it's here now. I thought, you know what? It's a little bit late. But, hey, I want to wear it. I want to represent. So,
Yeah.
It's
cool. Yeah, shout out to my grandmother for my great Darth Vader shirt.
Yeah, I was going to say, you got actually a cool
my little
Star Wars thing going.
Darth Vader drip going on. Shout out to the coolest grandmother this side of heaven. So thank you, Grandma, for my shirt. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, what do you say that we get right into our main topic?
Let's go.
All right. I had to do this little dance during this thing. Hey, it's a great song.
Yeah.
But all right, so we've got a new book that just came out.
Yeah.
Like maybe last month, right? Sometime in the middle of June.
Yeah. So, well, actually, towards the end of June. Well, yeah, end of June. Queen's Peril.
Which is actually the second book.
Yep.
That I didn't think about because they had Queen Shadow. That was the first book.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're basically on the second book. So before we get into this, you guys are watching live. Go ahead and chat with us. Y'all know the drill. No matter where you're watching this, you know, we can get the chat. So, you know, you can break in at any time. And we're probably going to end up going on a million different tangents like we usually do, but that's okay. We do have a bunch of stuff that we could talk about now. So what's the deal?
I know.
With Canon, to quote one of our old favorite shows, Jedi Council.
Right. So Queen's Peril, you know, that's been a book that's just recently come out, and a lot of people have been talking about that. There's some things in that book that have or could possibly change canon as we currently know it. I haven't gotten to that part yet. It primarily focuses on the election of Padme as Queen Amidala into that role on Naboo. But it's, you know, I didn't.
So wait a minute. Have you been reading this?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Does this mean
I finished Jedi Lost?
Did you finish Jedi Lost?
No, I didn't.
You jumped in. You know what? It was funny because I was tempted to actually jump into this book.
Yeah, I mean, I
did you? You did. Of course, you didn't read Queen Shadow yet.
No, I haven't read that one.
So just from like a layman who hasn't read any of these yet. Mm-hmm. Have you been having a hard time picking it up, or is it something that you could just jump right into?
Yeah, you can pretty much jump right into this. I mean, it's cool. It reads different. It reads like a traditional book, unlike Jedi Lost. But it's really cool. It kind of focuses on this. By the way, the backdrop of this is it takes place before the events of the Phantom Menace. So this is basically like maybe I probably would say maybe like a year or two before the events of Phantom Menace. Okay. Padme has been elected Queen of Naboo, and then now you're really kind of getting the background on and now it definitely makes me watch Phantom Menace differently because now I'm watching like all the handmaidens and stuff, and I'm like, I know all this background stuff about them now. So it's really cool because just to kind of give you a brief synopsis of it. So Palpatine, of course, is the senator. Mm-hmm. Padme she's 13 years old, something like that. She gets elected to be queen.
How old was she supposed to be in the Phantom Menace?
She's about 14 or 15.
Okay.
Maybe, somewhere, maybe possibly 16.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think she was that, because Anakin was like 9 or 10 or something.
Yeah, he was yeah.
So she was probably like 15.
Yeah, she was probably roughly around there.
Yeah. So this Queen's Peril is when she's about 13.
Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah, 13-ish. Yeah, she's 13.
And no, I don't know if you know the answer to this or not, but how long does it take place after Queen Shadow?
That I don't know. Yeah, that part I'm not, and I don't even know what Queen Shadow is actually about. Honestly, I
Well,
haven't looked into that
so
book yet.
Queen Shadow. So basically, like Queen's Peril, I think, is supposed to be around the time she's transitioning to senator, right?
No, Queen's Peril is when she.
Right, because this is still before the Phantom Menace.
Yeah, so she's still.
So she's like but she's already queen at the beginning of the book, though.
No, she just gets elected. Like she's just taking office in this book.
Well, that's what I think the Queen Shadow thing is all about. I think it's about the events leading up, like how she ends up becoming or getting in the running for it or whatever.
Okay.
Because the queens actually had to be elected.
Yeah, because they already had one queen, and they had like a bunch of different women. They kind of went through the whole political process of how they're selected. So pretty much everybody goes out to vote, and Padme was already the favorite to win, and then they had like different ladies, so they would actually like be in a room. So like Padme would be in like this room, the next room there would be another young lady, so on and so forth. So it was like about 4 candidates, and whatever the final tally was of the votes, the captain of the royal guard would come in, knock on the door, and bring you out. And it's like, okay, now, because no one is really supposed to know what the queen looks like.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's kind of like this whole. It's weird. It's kind of weird, but it's kind of cool at the same time.
Yeah, I don't understand that.
Yeah, so like.
Oh wait, Ronaldo's with us.
Hey man.
Hey man.
What's going on?
Glad to see that you can, make it.
So pretty much like when she's in her, there's the opening of the book kind of takes place with this other girl, and she's a violinist or she's some sort of like orchestra player, and she's always, her brothers are great musicians. Her whole family pretty much are great musicians.
Gee, so they really went into the serious backstory of all this.
Well, but it's really cool because you find out that the girl could never make first chair. So for all you music people, you kind of understand what that means. So she's never been like in the front. She was never really that good, but she was always a really good musician. But she really paid attention to a lot of different things. So she really wanted to kind of go off. She's like, well, I'm going to make a career just playing music and just join some company somewhere else and just do that. But eventually, Captain Panaka comes in and finds her, and he sees that like she's very diligent and she's very astute on a lot of different things, but she's just never been good enough. So he offers her this one position. So she's kind of like, okay, well, you're the captain of the guard. What is this position? Like, why are you even here? Like, this has to do with music. This doesn't make sense to me. So you kind of find out that he uses her as a bodyguard, as the body double, because she looks so much like Padme. He kind of already had a feeling that she was going to be the one to win. So he kind of did his own preliminary thing, like, okay, there were some things that's going on in the galaxy. And he was like, there might be some political unrest and some stuff. So I kind of Panaka's very tenacious when it comes to security.
Oh,
so,
yeah, you remember that from the movies.
Yeah. So he kind of found her, and then she became Padme's bodyguard or body double. But then, in order to even sell it even more, what they decided to do was they found like a bunch of different other girls who look almost same height, build, facial features, and they all had individual talent. So one was pretty good with technology. The other one was good with, she was actually kind of like a criminal. Like she kind of knew she would sell forged stuff and all that. There was another one who made like gowns and things like that. And there was another one who, I forgot what else she did, but it's like 6 or 7 of them. But the idea was that they all would rotate as the queen. So when it was time to go out for certain things, so let's just say there was a situation where you needed something where it was technologically driven. Well, then the person who's the tech handmaiden would then dress up as the queen, and then Padme would be in that group as well. And so that way you never knew where the queen actually was. It was kind of like the shell game. Like they kept moving themselves around, but they all had to learn how to talk like each other. have the same intonation. They had to walk, like all of it. It's kind of like it's this movie that was on Netflix.
Yeah, we've all been watching Netflix movies.
I'm trying to think. It's like something like The Number 7 or something like that. But it was pretty much like all these girls, but they were like, it was like doing this weird wartime. So they would all take turns going out into the world, but they would all look alike. So you would never, because they were only supposed to have one child, but this person had 7 daughters. And so so all of them had a chance to go outside and do certain things, they would just dress up like each other and then keep going out.
See, and this makes a lot of sense to me, the fact that you're reading this, because when I saw that you would put this as a topic, I'm like, well, that's pretty gutsy, man, because, like, neither one of us, this is all based on a book that...
Neither one, you thought...
Yeah, that I thought that neither one of us had read, and I'm like, okay. I mean, I guess if you know enough about... what's going on, we could carry it through, but still, that would almost be like a Cantina thing, not the...
Yeah, not the main story.
So how far are you into the book?
So the book is only like, 400 pages or something like that, and I'm in like, I think I'm halfway through the book already.
Oh, okay.
So it's really cool, and you see some things where Palpatine pops up. It doesn't, you have some moments where Obi-Wan Kenobi pops in with Qui-Gon and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Because, now you're kind of getting some stuff where
because we got
getting irritated by some stuff.
Sure, and because we had the Master and Apprentice book, we know that, hey, it's almost like you can actually start crossing these things now.
Exactly.
Like you can actually create this universe to where, much like what they tried to do this with the old expanded universe, but, unfortunately, it's like, they didn't always like do it. Like, it would be some of the books would be there, but then some of the other ones would have nothing to do with it. Mm-hmm. It sounds like what they could do now is they could actually take like books that happened during the same time period.
Almost like they did with Clone Wars, how they started showing you different, like, this is all going on at the same time, but here's this perspective.
Right. And now
here.
that you're getting all this extra material now, so now we have Master and Apprentice that basically dealt with, it was still pre-Phantom Menace, but it dealt with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon.
Right.
And then, of course, Jedi Lost, we got a little bit of Dooku coming up. Mm-hmm. So now you can tie all these things together.
Yep. So, yeah.
Mom's watching.
Hey, Mom.
It's always good to have your relatives on anything.
So, yeah, it's been cool, though. I mean, it's a really, really good book, and it's really kind of interesting just to see. And I didn't think it was going to be really that good because it's like, okay, it's another like girly type thing.
Yeah, I mean,
but it's actually really interesting.
You know
just
what?
To see
a
how
lot
they
of those
do
books that are classified as young adult are some of the best Star Wars books. Like Lost Stars, is a great example of it. That was actually classified as a young adult book.
Yeah, and so even in this, like, you see how Palpatine is starting to kind of like change some stuff, like in the Senate. So he's dealing with like these taxation bills and stuff like that. So you're starting to understand, like, okay, now when you hear about, when you watch the Phantom Menace and they're talking, remember they Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon had to go to that one ship, and it's like, whoa, this is just about tax bills and stuff. The negotiation should be short. Mm-hmm. That's where all this is. So it's like, oh, okay, so this is where.
So it's really enriching the whole Phantom Menace story, in other words.
Exactly. So now you're getting like kind of like, all right, the backstory, the backdrop of what happened in the Phantom Menace.
All right, but let's get into the part now that I had read the article that talked about the events that specifically deal with what we're talking about as our main topic.
Right. So Qui-Gon Jinn, of course, being the rebel kind of Jedi that he was, much kind of like Quinlan Vos and others, but there's things that, like I said, there's certain moments where, at least that I've gotten to so far, where there's Qui-Gon dealing with Obi-Wan and he's trying to help him understand that you need to understand the politics of stuff. You need to understand these little different things, these little nuances, because they can shape where a lot of things are going. Mm-hmm. And they did feel like a dark kind of a presence, but they just didn't know kind of really what. And they even kind of brought up that Yoda would meditate sometimes, and he would feel like nothing, like in the Force. Like there'll be the light side, and then there'll be like almost like he would feel nothing. And that was like Palpatine like blocking the dark side.
Oh, kind of like an absence of the Force sort of thing?
Exactly. Like like a wormhole or something in the North. So,
well, that's interesting.
But then there's this whole thing where, and a lot of people keep saying that Qui-Gon actually could have beaten Palpatine because of the fact that.
Well, wasn't the other thing too that where it changes it? It was something like Qui-Gon knew.
He had a sense.
Like he had a sense that Palpatine was a Sith Lord, or that Palpatine was doing something a little bit earlier than what everybody thought. And because, I mean, a lot of the internet community just went totally up in arms over this book.
Yeah.
And again, I haven't had the chance to read it yet.
Yeah, and I haven't gotten to that, and I have a feeling that's coming up soon. But the part, and I was hoping I would have actually gotten to that part by now, but there's like this whole thing, and because Qui-Gon he's kind of one of those people who kind of embraces the dark side. Like, he's not necessarily opposed to using it. Mm-hmm. It's just that you got to be careful on how you do it. And I think that's part of the reasons why they said, like, Qui-Gon actually probably could have beaten Palpatine. But then again, at the same time, like, I highly doubt that, because
it's like, man, he couldn't even beat
Maul. Exactly. It's like, okay, well,
like, dude, you can't even beat Maul.
The apprentice, and you're going to beat.
And Maul is not. He's really one of the. If you really look at all the apprentices that he had, he's the weakest one.
Yeah, out of all the grand scale.
Dooku could have easily beat Maul.
Definitely.
And I mean, we know Vader.
Oh.
It wouldn't have even been a contest. So it's kind of like, dude, if you can't.
Yeah, and that's where I'm kind of like, I'm with the Star Wars community. Like, yeah, I'm like, well, maybe you mean as far as force ability wise, maybe in the sense of he might have been able to figure out Palpatine's plan or figure out who Palpatine was before everybody else. Okay, I may be able to give you that. But actually to confront him.
No, there you go.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Like if he had solved the whole mystery of the Sith thing.
Exactly. I could see Qui-Gon doing that.
I could see.
But actually confronting him and beating him, no way.
No, and the thing is, and there's a lot of things that are going on in the Star Wars community right now, especially all these rumors and all this stuff that's swirling around. I mean, there's a rumor that, which I think they debunked it, but it's like, do you really need this debunked where it's like, they're going to scrap the whole sequel trilogy now, and George Lucas is going to make his 7, 8, and 9, and, and this was actually gaining steam. I mean, this wasn't just like some Reddit thread or something. I mean, there were a lot of, and it may have started there, I don't know, but there was a lot of people that were actually picking this up, and I'm like, if they did that, they would, I mean, I guess you can almost have mixed feelings about it, because a lot of people hated the Disney sequel trilogy anyway. Mm-hmm. You give it back to Lucas, at least make him make his own trilogy, you have a 50-50 shot. But a lot of people hated the prequels too.
But see, I think if you do that, though, I think what you do is you completely undermine the entire brand.
Absolutely. You can't do that. Even if you want to, you can't do that.
Even if you wanted to, like, you can't, because then now it's just like, well, what does that say about JJ?
I mean, does that make the sequel trilogy legends now? Well, where a lot of this started was the fact that a couple of people were interviewed, and it was some people that had worked with Lucas and Favreau, mm-hmm. and they were around during some conversations where Lucas basically said he hated The Last Jedi. He thought it was horrible. Mm-hmm. Really wasn't happy at all with in fact, that's why he jumped in on The Rise of Skywalker. Because remember, he did actually, I mean, he even wrote like some scenes or something like that, or kind of, basically punched things up. Yeah, and that was because he was just so despondent after The Last Jedi.
Well, yeah, I mean, and like going back to the whole point of like, if Lucas decided to scrap, or they decided to scrap all the stuff and, let Lucas do his thing, like, once again, you already have canon stuff out there. You have got books.
Well, they would decanonize it, and that's exactly, well, they could almost get him, I hate to be the devil's advocate here, but they could almost get away with it. Almost. Not quite, but depending on how they dealt with things, there isn't a whole lot of the new sequel trilogy characters outside of maybe Kylo that they really feature too much.
Well, what I'm saying is, though, it's like I think what you're going to do is you're going to confuse the fans, though, is because, like,
Oh, without question.
So what I'm saying is like, okay,
you
we're
totally
talking,
would confuse the fans.
and I'm talking about like the kids. Like I'm talking about kids who are like, let's say in middle school, like 11, 12 years old, maybe even going back to like 8 years old. You're gonna confuse them because they're like, okay, well, where's Rey and Poe, and like, huh? Like unless you keep those characters and you still utilize them, but then now you're giving them a whole completely different vibe and spin. I mean, it's you can't you can't do that.
No, and my biggest issue with the whole thing is that it's almost like it's one thing to admit that you made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
It's another thing to then take that to the next level and start, okay, we're just going to start all over again. I mean,
yeah.
You want to talk about making a mess of the whole Star Wars franchise?
Yeah, people.
And that would be a mess that people would remember forever.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, especially with the Star Wars franchise being the titan that it is. Because then, like, now it's like, okay, well, what do you do with all these characters, like all the merchandise that you had, like Phasma stuff, and like, are you keeping it? Are you redoing? Are you keeping the same characters, or are you just repurposing them? Like, what are you doing? Like, because if you get rid of everybody and just start from scratch, and like, all right, there's no Poe, there's no Rey, there's no Finn. Well, you got all this merchandise and stuff that's been sold. You got all this stuff that's been out there. So it's
you could. I mean, I hate to say it, you can almost spin it as like some sort of alternate universe thing.
See,
like they could make it legend. I mean, they could do. You know what the idea was?
See, Legends makes sense because it was old enough.
No, but this is funny. You know what their initial idea was? You're gonna die laughing when you hear this.
Jesus. What?
They were going to make it one of the World Between Worlds doors, like one of the possible futures.
Oh my God. Great. Now we're like including like Marvel stuff in here. It's like, oh, okay.
Well,
let's have Doctor Strange pop up and like, what?
No.
That's
not. That was brought up in Rebels. Remember?
No, I mean, I know. I
but
know
you're
that,
right. I know
it sounds
it's definitely a
it's,
it's a Marvel device. Yeah, without question. I mean, but still, it's just one of those things that I guess that would be, if they were going to go forward with that, that's the only way they could do it.
But then how do you prove then that this version is the actual right? You know what I'm saying? Like, because now
I know they.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. It's a really difficult spot to be in, and it just shows you now though that because usually, look, where there's smoke, there's fire.
Right.
So even if this isn't actually something that they were planning on doing, you know that at least somewhere there's conversations because you have a thing to where I forgot. I think they were saying like Favreau wanted to move forward with something like this, and now they're going back and forth where Kathleen Kennedy, of course, is against it, which why wouldn't she be? They were her movies.
Well, not only that, but I mean, like...
Well, it'd be a really dumb move.
Yeah, I think that's why she's like freaking out, like, okay, guys, we've already made, like, let's not compound the mistake. You know, it's like, there's already crap in the room. Let's not smear it everywhere, shall we?
Yeah, right.
It's just
right.
like...
I mean, right now it's contained. Let's not just throw it all over the place.
Exactly.
Know? Yeah, but it just shows you, though, that they really know that they're in trouble. And now I'm hearing that maybe the 2022 movie has been scrapped for now.
Well, I mean, I think this is the part, like I said, unfortunately, no one wanted this coronavirus, of course. However,
and that's true. That there could be some, could be part of why they're doing it.
But I think like with this happening, it's kind of a blessing in disguise, not just for Star Wars, but even for a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people have saved money. A lot of people have, come up with business ventures for when this is over. So, I mean, there's some good that comes out of the storm, so to speak. But I think in this regard, you can look at it from the perspective that this gives you time to do what we've always said, plan. Like, actually think this stuff through, run it by people, run it by George, run it by, Favreau, Filoni, like everybody, and just really just iron this thing out. Like, so that way you can go forward for the next, let's say, 4 to 6 years, knowing what you're going to do, and all you need to do is just like, how do we get from point A to point B?
Yeah, well, and that's definitely something they need to do. And the other thing they need to do is, like I said, it's one thing to admit, hey, you know what, we made a misstep, we made a couple of mistakes, we need to fix it and move on. But I mean, if you start entertaining these like grandiose, crazy, sweeping changes to everything, I mean, here's a thought. If you guys know, I still maintain that Rian Johnson can make a really good trilogy.
Sure.
because I think the biggest problem with The Last Jedi is the fact that he started playing around with beloved characters. And I think that if he basically had his own sandbox to play in, that it would be cool. But my whole thing is, like, let's just say that you're trying to err on the side of caution. Cancel his trilogy.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing with Rian Johnson, and I agree, I think if you give him his own sandbox into which he can create, I think he'll be fine. And I completely agree that, like, not only are you dealing with beloved characters, but, like, you're probably dealing with quintessentially the most important character in the whole Star Wars franchise, and that's, like, the story of Luke Skywalker. Like, you're dealing with, like, okay, we got Han and what Leia and all of them been doing all this time, and, okay, we introduced these new characters.
That's why they had to bring the World Between Worlds thing up when they were thinking of just dumping it, because now you would have to change that story.
Well, which part?
Well, let's just say that they move forward with the whole, you know what, sequel trilogy is no longer canon, we're going to make a new canon for it. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, you could get away with the whole Rey, Finn, and Poe thing because they're new characters. You could either not have them in the new trilogy, you know, the revamped 7, 8, 9, or whatever. But the problem is you already gave a definitive future for what happened to Han, Luke, and Leia afterward. Mm-hmm. Not to mention the fact that it would be really backwards because you'd have the original Leia in the non-canonized version, and you'd have to recast her for a brand new one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, it would be just a big cluster, you know?
Well, some of the best news that I've heard, too, like I said, there's a lot of rumblings around. That's one of the reasons why this whole Queen's Peril thing starting to mess with canon a little bit leads to this discussion, because there's all kinds of stuff out there.
Right.
There's a story, apparently the Kevin Feige movie. There's a rumor. Again, I have to preface this by this is a rumor. This isn't some, like, we're not reporting news here.
Right.
This is all rumors that we've heard and basically like what we think of these rumors. So the Kevin Feige movie is supposed to bring Mara Jade into it. And Brie Larson would play that character. Which would be interesting.
It would.
I could see that.
Yeah.
You'd have to dye her hair red, but
yeah.
Yeah. But again, see, this shows that your Kevin Feige's, your Favreau's, these are the guys that are actually listening to the Star Wars fan base. These are the guys that are fans themselves. They're the real fans.
Yeah.
You know, they're giving people what they want, and they could do that. I've often said they could still, well, this is a discussion you and I had a long time ago, but they could have made the Timothy Zahn trilogy even factoring in the new characters.
Yeah.
Very easily.
Yeah.
You know, they could have, if they didn't want to use like the older characters or whatever, they could actually have told that same story.
Yeah, with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
That we
all you would have to do is replace a Kip Duran character with Rey. You would put Finn, well, you could just add him, really. You know, you could really add the other guys, too.
Yeah,
but Han, Luke, and Leia would still have been there. They could do exactly what they did in the trilogy. That would be fine. And then, of course, they bring in Talon Card. They bring in Mara Jade. They could do all that stuff. And they could have brought in the characters exactly as they had written them. But, again, for some weird reason, they seem to be messing around with a lot of this stuff. And that's why I was initially afraid of this book.
Well, yeah.
Because I was like you. I mean, you know, first of all, I was surprised there was a sequel
to
Queen Shadow. I thought that was another one of the one and done.
Yep.
Yeah. So now I'm wondering, is this part of a trilogy?
Yeah, I don't know.
You're going to have to come back and report like when you finish this in a year.
Funny.
Hey, man,
I know,
you know what?
I know.
Well, what did you finally think of Jedi Lost now that you read the whole thing?
No, I haven't. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, you just, like, you know what?
Picked up... Well, because this thing freaked... I heard the news. I'm like, okay, I gotta see.
Yeah, and you know what? It's so funny that you bring that up because I almost did that. I almost bought it like 2 days ago.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I gotta see what they're talking about now because, like, if this is what we need to talk about this. So, but like I said, so far, like, I'm pretty much halfway through the book, maybe a little bit over half, half of the way done. So, I I'll probably be done by the next show, definitely. Because this is an easier read, too, and it's faster.
Well, the problem with the Dooku book is it's basically a movie script.
Yeah.
So Ronaldo says, now that you mentioned Kevin Feige, I don't see him having the same problems with planning that Lucasfilm had. He seems to take his plans very seriously. Yeah, that's the reason why we were so happy that he was the one that actually had some sort of a movie deal with them. But we don't really know. See, the problem with the whole Kevin Feige project is they never really defined it, that I remember anyway.
No, they haven't defined anything, really. I mean, that's
yeah.
I mean, we just know that, okay,
That's true.
Mandalorian
That
Season
is
3 has
true.
been greenlit. Kenobi is still a go. And these are some other possible shows that we got coming up. And Ahsoka has her own thing. But
yeah, and the Cassian Andor series is still rolling. I mean, we know a lot about the TV universe.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that, that's why I feel like they need to kind of, I get the fact that Star Wars is the films, like everybody, that's kind of the centerpiece, if you will. But, and I was watching The Gallery, and
The Gallery was so good.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much stuff. But listen to, Dave Filoni made this point. He was pretty much breaking down what Star Wars is. Like, there's
wasn't that amazing?
Yeah, it was just amazing. And it's like
it's
when you listen to it from that perspective, it's like, there you go.
Right.
Like, there you go.
Right. Like, why don't you get this? It's like, was Kathleen at the table at the time? I don't remember.
I think so.
Yeah, and it's like,
yeah.
Are you listening to this?
Right.
Like, somebody should just like hold their head,
like a dog.
Yeah, pretty much, and just like do you want the written transcript? Do you want this for the next time or whatever? It's like, why is it so hard to understand?
Yeah, he's like, the TIE fighters and all that stuff. This is the dressings for everything. These are the lightsabers and all that. But here's the story. Here's the basics of what Star Wars is, and if you can just follow that formula, now when you dress it up with all the other the animatronics and the technology and all the other stuff that you're advancing, it's all advancing this one thing. And that's, if you could just keep that as the focal point in the center, you're off to the races. And I'm like, thank you, let's just do that. That's why I always said, like, Filoni or Favreau needs to be at the head of this thing.
Yeah.
Or at least the creative director.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, she can handle the money and just like, hey, how much money do you need? Oh, okay, you need like $6 million. Okay, here you go.
Yeah, and then I don't even remember who they brought in as the creative. I mean, I know like Bob Iger over all of Disney is like a creative director or something.
Right.
But I think they brought in some woman that was supposed to be over the Star Wars creative thing.
Yeah.
And I don't remember her name offhand, but it's one of those things. And it just
Yeah.
It just irritates me so bad because all they need to do is put a couple of the right people in place that they already have, by the way.
They're there already.
They're there. All they have to do is put these people in like a slightly different position. Yeah. And then they'll take it. Especially Favreau.
Yeah. I would say your top 3 people that you need are Favreau, Filoni, and Feige. The 3 Fs.
Yeah, I would go along with that.
And I think with that you have the nucleus of Star Wars, because between the 3 of them, they get it. Favreau understands directing and how to get things out of people. Filoni gets George Lucas's vision and his dream, and he understands the concepts. And then you have Feige, who's just a great producer and storyteller. He's great at like crafting something that we already kind of are familiar with and just really just bringing it home.
And why is it so tough?
That's what I'm saying. Like, you should win championship after championship with these guys. I mean, at this point.
Yeah, and that's I think that's one of the things that irritates me the most. Another one, it's the authors. The authors seem to get it.
Yeah, it's like everybody gets it but Kathleen. Like,
I mean, the books are really good. I mean, you're reading Queen's Peril right now. Yep. Do you think you're going to swing back and read Queen's Shadow?
Once I finish Queen's Peril, I'm going to go back and finish Jedi Lost, and then I may pick that one up unless there's something else that like grabs my attention, I might go back to Queen.
Well,
Shadow.
I mean, yeah, Queen Shadow I think would be probably, from what I read about it, it seemed like it was a cool book.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just thinking that if they're advancing the story to the point to where, the second book actually is starting to change canon a little bit, maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to go to the first one.
True.
Yeah. All right. Well, let us know in the comment section if you guys are watching the rebroadcast of this thing. You can let us know in the comment section right now if you're watching on Facebook or even YouTube. Remember, you could chat with us live, whenever you guys want, just break in there. You've already seen a couple of people break in. So what do you say we do a little bit of battle?
Let's go, man.
All right, let's do it. I did not let you say the name of the segment, so I'm going to do that now. What are we on right now?
Duel of the Fates.
All right. So this is kind of interesting. You pit a couple of characters, obviously they're familiar to me being a Star Wars fan, but I'm like, Luminara, man, I got to read up on her again just so I can make an intelligent decision. But
right. Yes, we have who will win in the duel between Luminara Unduli and Shaak Ti.
I'm going to go with Luminara.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Did you read about her?
Mm-hmm.
And you're still going with Shaak Ti?
I think I'm going with Shaak Ti, man.
Unbelievable.
Don't get me wrong, Luminara. I mean, I first of all, I've always
she fought Asajj Ventress. She's fought and then you read back she's fought all these other, major people.
Yeah. No, I mean she's definitely a butt
Well, I mean,
kicker.
I'm assuming this is why you chose this because they're basically. I mean, and it's true. They both have their.
They both have their days. I mean, and like I said, Shaak Ti, she can be pretty powerful. When need be, and I keep trying to, for a lot of people who don't know, she was actually on the council. So
yeah.
Once again, when you
kind of went out like a punk though.
Yeah.
In the deleted scene.
In the deleted scene, yeah. But I mean, she's for you to be at that level to get onto the council where once again you're sitting amongst Plo Koon, Plo Koon, and Obi-Wan. Mace,
it could have been
Yoda.
Qui-Gon.
It could have been Qui-Gon. Yes.
Had he not gotten stabbed and also went out like a punk.
Well, he didn't go out like a punk. He just went out because he was old and tired.
Here's the thing that bothers me about all that, though.
Okay.
It's everybody keeps yapping about what a great swordsman Qui-Gon is.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's especially if you read the Phantom Menace book, they had that whole, there's almost a whole prequel or prologue or whatever that's actually in that book. And, I mean, they're going on and on about how he's this great swordsman and all that. And don't get me wrong, he pulled out some cool moves in the Phantom Menace.
Mm-hmm.
I just wasn't seeing it.
Yeah. Well, I think
he should have easily have dispatched Maul.
Yeah, but I think the thing is that he wasn't prepared. It's one thing to go against.
Kind of like he was rusty because nobody's gone up against a Sith Lord for
a Sith Lord.
Eons.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They've been extinct for 1,000 years.
Well, Obi-Wan didn't do too bad.
But you got to understand, he's younger. He's younger, and he has.
That's ageism.
Well, hey man, listen. Here's the thing.
Hashtag.
Right. Never mind. I'm not even gonna make that joke right now. But anyway,
go, dude. We could get some views.
Yeah, but those.
Yeah, the chat section might turn a little grim, but hey,
we'll definitely be on, let's say, the dark side of things. But no, I mean, because I understood why Qui-Gon lost. One, he was caught off guard the very first time he encountered Maul, because even when he got done, he was first of all, they were trekking through the sand and everything like that. Then he's engaging Darth Maul in this whole duel. When he got on the ship, he's breathing, he's out of breath. He's man, he's oh yeah, Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's worn out.
He was out of shape.
Yeah, he was out of shape. He wasn't ready for this.
He was on a desert planet, though. I mean,
I get it. That's what I'm saying.
Wearing these robes and.
But Darth Maul's got on all black. But once again,
in an air-conditioned hangar, probably.
He
wasn't out. Well, no, there was the duel where he was out. That's true.
Yeah, and so that's okay. That was their first encounter. So then it's okay, when they ran into him again, it's okay, he fared pretty well against him because, like Obi-Wan was getting dispatched. I mean, he got knocked off the whole platform.
Obi-Wan always does, though. Have you noticed that? Like, in almost every battle. It's like Obi-Wan usually gets, like, knocked out fairly quickly.
But see, that's because, and this is why I understand Anakin's point and I understood Qui-Gon's point. When you look at the duel between, it was just Darth Maul and Qui-Gon, you look at it from the perspective of this. He hasn't competed against a Sith Lord. Like, yeah, he duels, like, he's doing training with, Obi-Wan and keeping his skills sharp. But when you're a master at something, it's like you're not really competing against anybody who's really at your level. But it's like when you got someone who's like at your level or above it, and who actually who's just as fast or faster than you, but still at your skill level, it's kind of hard to kind of keep up, especially if you haven't practiced. What gave Obi-Wan the edge, if you notice, is that like once he got angry, you could tell in his fighting, it completely changed.
I mean, I guess I can see that.
And that's when he was able to hang out. That's how he was able to beat and best Maul. And even then, he still kind of lost almost.
That's true.
He was just cunning enough
to basically, and that basically shows what Obi-Wan's always been strong with is the whole he can use strategy and think on his feet or whatever. Because it's true. I mean, initially he did kind of lose. Ronaldo says Luminara wins, Shaak Ti always dies.
Well, see, the thing about Shaak Ti, like I said, she's actually pretty powerful, especially as a Force user. Like don't get me wrong, so is Luminara, and Luminara is very much more. She has a lot of Mace in her.
Yes,
she's a lot more Mace Windu like, but Shaak Ti has a lot of Yoda in her though. She has a lot of that quiet. I'm gonna just relax. Well,
there's definitely, and that's the thing. Yes, there's definitely a difference in fighting styles. Mm-hmm. I think it's Luminara that's more like on fighting style 2 or something. It's like I read a lot of some of this other stuff, and it does give him certain advantages and disadvantages. Ronaldo says supposedly Darth Maul was only 22 when he fought Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, and of course, a dark side guy. They're all using emotion, passion, hatred, anger, all that stuff.
And it's harder to keep up with that, for somebody. But when you're young, you have that type of energy to let it go. And he's had that bottled up in him for us. It's like, he went to Palpatine. He was like, at last we can finally, he can't wait to get this out.
That's true. He was ready.
Yeah, he wanted to prove himself. So.
And he basically wanted it more. Mm-hmm. I think that's really what it comes down to.
And that's the thing. That's what I always agree with Anakin when he would argue with Obi-Wan, and even Dooku brought it out, is that the Jedi aren't willing to do what's necessary sometimes to complete the mission. And that's going to bring into some of the things I want to talk about later in the Cantina. But yeah, that's the thing about being a Jedi is that you're so. Even watching the Clone Wars, I'm watching those again and just watching how Obi-Wan is doing stuff versus Anakin. Like, Anakin's walking into a bar and he's force choking the bartenders, like, where is, so-and-so? Like, I'm not playing, like, give me the information, where Obi-Wan's like, well, my friend, perhaps we can talk about this and figure out, like, and...
Well, the Clone Wars is really good with filling in a lot of things and because I finally hit season 4 on that again.
Okay.
So, I'm through, like, maybe 4 episodes or something into season 4 or 5. I just got past the whole, like, Mon Calamari, Quarren.
Oh, man. That was getting on my nerves.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I did like when Kit Fisto showed up. That he made it more
and he does that whole little smile that he always does. Like, that's kind of like
he's
his
more
thing.
humorous, too, though. Like, I like that aspect about him. Because you don't find too many Jedi who are actually, like, just have a sense of humor. Everybody's so serious. But Kit Fisto's...
I always liked his character, actually. I always thought he was cool.
Very lighthearted. But, yeah, I just finished the... when Obi-Wan they faked Obi-Wan's death and he had to go under.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that one is really cool. But yeah, like that's the problem that I see with a lot of the Jedi. But when you talk about Luminara and Shaak Ti, Luminara is definitely powerful. But I think Shaak Ti's ability to remain calm in the situation. And she's actually pretty powerful in the Force, actually using the Force, and her senses are really attuned to a lot of different things that she's kind of has that, she kind of has like a female Dooku vibe to me, like that regal, quiet, doesn't say much, but when she does say something, it's like impactful. Whereas Luminara is more like,
yeah, I could see that.
You know,
I could.
She's
see
more
that.
stern, because you saw how she was with what's the Padawan that looks just like her?
Oh yeah,
there's Luminara, and then there's
I always forget her name. Borisofi?
Borisofi, yep.
Yeah.
Barris, yep.
Borisofi, yeah.
Yep. So yeah, I kept wanting to call her Coffee, but
well, and she was also kind of stern with Ahsoka too.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was that one episode of the Clone Wars where that was one where she fought Ventress. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's pretty crazy stuff.
And they kind of get into some different type of Force powers too. Like,
yep.
Luminara's, she's more. I think she did something with.
Well, that's it. I just think
the climate or something.
I think that Luminara, exactly, kind of like a storm.
Like a
thing.
storm, yeah, from the X-Men.
And I mean, I think that that's one of the reasons why I go with Luminara, because there's like, she seems more well-rounded. She's fought more powerful people.
Yeah.
So I just think that, in a duel, I think Luminara would just. But I get it though.
But Shaak Ti is very strategic though, and
that's the thing. That's why
it's like the Anakin versus Obi-Wan. Like, who
yeah,
wins
you can
that?
really go back and forth on it, because you know what? I'm gonna say that it probably just depends on the day.
It does.
Today, I think it's Luminara.
We'll go with that.
All right, but what do you guys think? I mean, who's going to win? I mean, we know what Ronaldo thinks, but what do you guys think? Leave it in the comment section if you're watching on the rebroadcast. You can chat it live. You can leave it in the comments live. Do whatever you want. It's up to you. All right, man. It's getting kind of hot in this room now.
Yes, sir.
See, we have to turn the air conditioning off because it's so noisy when we do this, and it's like 90-some degrees.
Outside.
Yeah, which means it's going to get a lot warmer in here.
Mm-hmm.
So don't be surprised if the show's a little shorter than most.
I feel like Mustafar in here.
Exactly. But what do you say we cool off with a drink?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's go to the Cantina. All right, here we are, and now we've got your first thing, which you brought, which is what changes we would make to the original trilogy, right?
Yeah. Just talking to people, I run into folks all the time, and of course, social distancing. And,
of course.
And we would talk about, sometimes Star Wars would come up, and, we would talk about something. Somebody brought it like, what would you change about the original trilogy? And I had to really think about it, like, wow, like, what would I change? I think, one, the Ewoks. I would rather see the Wookiees.
Yes. That was just about to say. That probably my biggest one.
Mm-hmm.
Would be to do the original Wookiee plotline instead of the Ewoks.
But I've also would have loved to have seen, and it was funny because when you sent me that one, I think it was an article. Yes, an article that you sent me about what a redeemed Vader would look like.
Oh yeah, wasn't that cool?
Yeah, and I was like, that's one of the things I've always wished I could have seen. Like, I mean, we kind of saw Vader, I guess, if you want to say it, as Anakin, because he was a Jedi at that point, but like, at the zenith of his power, now being on the light side, like, what would that look like?
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I would have loved to have seen.
That was another one of mine. Yeah, we might have the same list.
Extended. I probably would have loved to see the extended development of, at the beginning, Return of the Jedi for Luke. Because I remember there was that deleted scene where they showed him
where he was building a lightsaber or whatever.
But I would have loved to have seen just like, okay, some of the stuff that he was like working on and just kind of practicing. Mm-hmm. Because like I said, when we last saw him in Empire, he got his hand lopped off, and he kind of definitely got his butt kicked by Vader. So you're like, okay, but then you see him, Return to the Jedi, he's walking up casually, just choking Gamorrean guards, and you're like, whoa, he's got all black, and you're like, this ain't the same Luke.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that. Another thing I would have liked to have seen is, you remember when they created that whole, what would the whole Obi-Wan Vader battle look like now?
Oh yeah, that yes.
Drop that in.
Yes, definitely.
I mean, as long as you're doing special edition stuff, drop that in.
Absolutely. Especially I hate when they had that one part where he's doing this weird little circle thing, and it's like lightsaber goes out, and it's like this one little dot. You remember that?
Oh yeah.
It's like
yeah. Well, and that was commonly a mistake.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just like
I know, isn't that was
why would
crazy.
you like? How did you not miss? So how did you miss that in editing? Yeah. I think those are really the only things I can really honestly say that I would change.
Yeah.
The original trilogy.
And that's probably same here. I would change nothing. It was perfect. And then, by the way, what did White Elephant say? He was on a mission. Yeah, he said that he was going on some missionary trip or something that for like the next year.
Oh wow.
Yeah. You didn't catch that?
No.
I gather by the surprised look on your face.
Yeah.
You're like, really? Yeah, so and it was too bad too because, White Elephant is one of our major chatters, but hey, we've got Ronaldo. So he had basically earlier said, change Ewoks for Wookiees, and controversial one, don't make Luke and Leia brothers, and then also the second Death Star. So let's talk about that for a second, because that's kind of interesting.
Which one, Luke and Leia or the Death Star? Okay.
Well, really both, if you think about it.
Well, yeah, it's funny because that actually kind of plays into a little question that comes up a little bit later on today's show. But
well, then we won't spoil it.
We won't. So we'll go to the Death Star.
Look at you knowing our show order and everything.
Well,
show order.
It's the heat, man.
I know,
it's
man.
making me crazy. Oh man, but no, I mean, so some people had issues with the second Death Star.
I don't.
I don't either. I think that
because I mean, well, go ahead.
When you first look at it, I mean, like, okay, it's an impressive weapon. I mean, to be able to, you have a space station that's the size of a planet that can actually travel through hyperspace, and it has the power and the capabilities to destroy an entire planet. I mean, like, so the only problem is that maybe we need to fix exhaust ports. Like, all right, no exhaust ports in this one. Like, all right. And it's kind of like, I would joke about the whole Wile E. Coyote thing.
Well, you know what, though? It makes you wonder, because remember, with the second Death Star, they didn't even have time to complete it.
No, they didn't.
So it makes you wonder if that same exhaust port was there.
No, well, I mean, yeah, if they would have completed it, would have they?
Yeah, would it have been? Now, of course, I think that, because remember, I used to have all those books, like, what do they call them? It'd be
the
like
encyclopedias of.
Well, it's sort of like that.
But they're like the vehicles and.
Yeah, vehicles and ships, and then they had like weapons and whatever, and the Death Star naturally was in one of them, and they had both versions of it. But yeah, it would have been. I don't know. It would have been interesting.
But that was always the Emperor's plan anyway, though. He already had plans of making.
See, and that's why I didn't have a problem with it. Number one, you're not going to build just one of those things.
Well, yeah, and especially like he wanted to be able to control like all aspects of the galaxy. So it's like instead of just having one, I have several space stations that I could just, or Death Stars, if you will, that I can just go to different, ones. If I want to go to the Outer Rim, I got one out there. I can control that region. I got
Absolutely.
one. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
It makes sense. And not to mention the fact that, and I know it's fantasy, but if you think about just movies that are made about everyday life here on Earth, a lot of recurring themes. If you think of the military, you think of countries. It's not like they're doing some, different thing or whatever. It's pretty much the same kind of deal. They're going to build a better gun or a better tank or a better...
Yeah, they're going to improve upon what's already been done.
Yeah. They're not going to do it. Now, Nilitube says, by The Force Awakens, the Death Star had worn itself out. And, I mean, I could see that from the standpoint of it's the same plot device.
Yeah.
And now you got Starkiller Base, which, again, I have to admit, I was a little bit disappointed. But at the same time, it makes sense.
Well, I mean,
improve on what you have. Although the technology was a little whacked. I mean,
the only thing about the Starkiller Base, though, unfortunately, was that it couldn't travel. It was just stationary. But the fact, but its reach was impressive. I mean, you get it,
Well,
and on top, you could do multiple at one time.
But the thing was, you had to be by the sun, and you're drawing the energy from that and then spitting it out, and I don't know, it just seemed like it would be pretty problematic.
Well, see, you also have to think about it, too. Like, the biggest thing that the dictators, always have the problem with is that they think that they have and Leia said it best, the more you tighten your grip, the more people will slip through your fingers. And that's the thing that people who are in power they become so drunk and so arrogant with their power that they think nothing can stop them because they're just the ultimate power. No different than the guy said, well, this is the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it. And Vader tried to correct him, like, don't be too proud of this terror you've constructed. So you have that particular aspect. And then even if you look at the Jedi were arrogant and thinking that, like, okay, well, the Sith can return. We were surely sent it. Apparently not. So once again, it's like everybody kind of gets obsessed and drunk or arrogant with their power sometimes, that they just think that, like, nothing was going to be able to rise up against them. I mean, at that time, like, they had, and that was the whole point of these things, like the Death Star, the Star Killer base. Tarkin said it. Fear would keep them in line. Fear this battle station. Like, I'm not about to rise up against this, and I know this thing could wipe out my whole planet. All right, you can have whatever
when you really
want.
stop, and that's the thing, we're spoiled in science fiction and fantasy movies because we've seen a lot of these things but when you really stop and think about it, like, what would happen if a Death Star was here?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, you look up in the night.
Yeah, you look up in there, and that this, force or whatever out there actually has this weapon that if you make one little misstep, it will destroy this entire planet
in a matter of seconds.
Yeah, that's kind of a big deal.
Yeah. So
Nilatu also says, did you like Star Wars 9 since they had a ton of Death Star Destroyers?
To me, that was once again, that was a better, and this is kind of where you look at the, I guess if you look at the Emperor, like, this is why he's like such a mastermind. It's because he's always thinking and revamping and like, okay, how can I improve upon this technology? How can I take something that it's harder to kill? So like, okay, it's harder to destroy a fleet versus of these things than just one station. Like, you got one station. All right, that's the only target. I wipe it out. It's done and over with. But now you have a fleet of, let's say, 80 of these ships that have this capability. Okay, you destroy one, I got another one. Like, you can't really...
Yeah, I mean...
and you can control more sectors a lot faster.
That's it. But the concept was great.
Yeah, the concept was brilliant.
Concept was great. The way they explained the technology, though, and how susceptible they were, that any little X-Wing or whatever could just fly up and destroy... That I thought was a little weak.
Well, I mean, you're always looking at it from the standpoint of, you expect people to be competent. Like, it's kind of like, all right, when you really stop and think about it. What,
like somebody sent out a recall on the Star Destroyer laser?
Well, no, not that, but it's just like, that's hilarious.
Like, look, man, we got a recall notice. We got to get back to,
No, but think about it. Okay. We have a military, Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force. These people are trained. You go through boot camp, you go become a specialist, you get all this, grandiose power. Like, I'm expecting you guys to be able to defeat these little rebels. Like, you got like 12 people that you got. Like, why can't you stop these people?
The best comment in the world came from that one robot chicken thing with the Emperor, where he's like, what did he say? Like, oh, I didn't know I had to do something to...
Oh, for a bunch of teenagers.
Yeah, with a bunch of teenagers.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. And that's what I'm saying. Like,
and that would be the attitude that you would have.
Like, I have a whole military that are trained, I got legions and upon legions of troopers for every particular, like, from snow troopers to jungle troopers to biker scouts to regular stormtroopers, flamethrowers. I got everything in the book. And you mean to tell me that these guys who have no military training at all blow past this whole defense system and just You see what I'm saying? Like, this shouldn't happen.
See, this would have been the post locker room discussion after a game kind of a thing. Like, that's what I wanted to see. That's one of the reasons why I like that Robot Chicken thing, by the way, is because you have to wonder what kind of conversation did the Emperor have with everybody when the first Death Star blew up.
Yeah, that's
it's
why.
Like, really? I mean, and who's the one that? I mean, because Vader probably was still spinning around out there. But let me catch up with some of these comments. Let's see. Ronaldo says, in my opinion, the Starkiller base works better than the second Death Star because it's like the First Order thought about the mistakes of the first Death Star and made something more powerful. Which, of course, goes into what you were saying, where it's kind of like, okay, let's learn from history, learn from the past, and that's what we do now, right? I mean,
sure.
We look at, say, like the Vietnam era, choppers or planes or subs or whatever, and you're constantly going, okay, here's the strengths, here's the weaknesses, let's improve upon it.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at things like, okay, a bulletproof vest, like the old ones were very big, clunky, and but they stopped it, but it's harder to move in those things. So it's like, okay, well, how do we make them more lightweight, flexible, but still offer some good protection?
Well, I'll give you something that's really relevant to everybody today. Thermometers. In the old days, they used to be mercury thermometers, right? You used to have to like shake them up, and then of course if you accidentally broke them, it's like your entire house was contaminated practically.
Right.
Then they came out with the digital ones. Not bad, and they kept improving on them to where they could take your temperature faster. Because when I first started using digital thermometers, it was great. It was like it took 3 minutes for the thing or something to get the reading. Now it takes like 30 seconds, and now they got those stupid ones that you could just shoot
point
at your
head.
forehead or something. And then, so it's a constant evolution of technology and things like that. So that does stand to reason. Now here's the... Nilatu brings up something. There are people out there that want to make the sequel trilogy Legends. See, I told you people were talking about this. How do you feel I would be mad if that happened? Well, we covered that at great length about an hour ago.
Yeah, if you want to rewind this.
Yeah, right. If you actually want to rewind this thing or, watch the on-demand. But just as kind of a recap, for your benefit, we basically think that they would be completely trashing the entire thing.
Brand, basically.
Yeah, the whole brand would basically collapse if they did this, because it's one thing to admit they made a mistake. It's quite another to just go, let's just start over. Because remember, and we brought this up earlier, the whole explanation that they're giving is that, it was a world between worlds thing. Which, by the way, is the only way that you could explain that.
Right.
But still, I don't know. Nilitube also says, to an extent, we are living in a Star Wars world. The United States has non-nuclear EMP satellite weapons. Yeah, it's funny because it's almost like the ion cannon, is there.
Yep.
Also goes on to say, I want a Star Wars movie based off of this 2020 year.
Yeah.
Sorry, the title in New Hope has already been taken, though.
It's more like The Economy Strikes Back.
Where was I an hour ago? Yeah.
That's what I
We're
like
wondering
to know.
the same thing. Exactly. See?
But yeah, man, I just think that, a lot of different things in the original trilogy were pretty flawless, in my opinion. I mean, I think...
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Some of the stuff that
storytelling-
we mentioned that, some of our viewers have mentioned, definitely... I think would be the only things that I would do. I mean, the original trilogy is fairly untouchable. Maybe there's like little stupid things.
Yeah, but by and large, I mean, it's...
I would add that dinner conversation in Empire Strikes
Back.
Back.
Your favorite. Yes, that's your favorite. Yep.
But other than that, yeah, I think that pretty much. So just to recap, we said Wookiees instead of Ewoks.
Right.
We said, we said the whole Obi-Wan Vader battle.
Yep.
That guy did.
Luke and
Leia not being brothers.
Brother and sister, right.
And we'll address that more a little later.
A little bit later. And then,
Now we got to rewind it.
No, the Vader actually being on the light side.
Yes.
A redeemed Vader.
Yes, a redeemed Vader that goes on. And this is one of the things that I would have liked to have seen with Kylo. Mm-hmm. You know, I've often said this. Like, why couldn't... It would have been nice to have seen what they... Because if you think about it, if Vader had survived and he became the light side, it's not like he could just go up to the New Republic or the Rebels or wherever and go, "Hey guys, I'm good now."
Well, but I've always wondered, like, okay, so we know that you can go to the dark side, but can you come and you can be redeemed, but can you ever be a Jedi again?
Oh yeah.
See, that's something we've never seen before.
But the thing is, they became Force ghosts though. So I mean,
yeah, but they died though. But I'm saying, like, actually, like, come back and just. Like if Dooku never got beheaded and he's realized, oh yeah, I made a mistake. My bad. Can I come home? And that's what I'm saying. Like, could that happen?
I don't see why not.
But would the Jedi Order take you? Is what I'm saying. Like,
well,
you could be on the light side, but would the Jedi Order receive you again and saying like?
Well, I mean, it might be with a few restrictions. Like, listen, I mean, we're glad to have you back, but. You know what I mean? It's kind of like one of those things where it's like, I don't think they'd be so quick to trust them. Mm-hmm. It's so Nilitube's put up a bunch of comments here. One is, do your fans want a Star Wars multiverse world between worlds deal? I don't know, fans. What do y'all think of that? I mean, me personally, I have mixed feelings about the world between worlds. I like the concept, but at the same time, I also think that it could definitely be used in a very cheap way.
Yeah, I think it also can convolute a lot of different things. I think people will get confused. I think you're dealing with a lot, especially like when it's I think with Star Wars, you kind of have to gradually put people into certain things because it's not like Star Trek where like the whole thing about Star Trek is it's a voyage. It's like, okay, you're going to encounter all this.
Right, it's like a
stuff.
Journey kind of a thing, an exploration type of deal.
So you're expecting different stuff every time you go out.
Sure.
Star Wars is very like story driven. It's kind of like along a linear path, so to speak, and it's
not only that, but again, this is the difference between fantasy and sci-fi that a lot of people don't really understand. It's fantasy. With sci-fi, you have to explain everything.
Right.
And the problem is that with Star Wars, everybody goes, well, I want an explanation. Well, how come the Millennium Falcon can do this, but not that? Or, they're almost looking for like these sci-fi-like explanations to things. Mm-hmm. It's like, you got to understand, it's fantasy. Yeah. You don't have to explain.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
In fantasy. So, not sure. Will you guys do a Galaxy's Edge vlog? If we ever go there, yeah.
The way Corona's looking,
yeah. I mean, if we ever go there, sure.
Yo, anything
we kind of wanted to do a Star Wars celebration vlog, but I won't.
Yeah, we won't. Don't poke the bear.
We won't go there. They denied our press pass. We need more listeners. And Nilitube says, okay, I'm going to stop spamming. Yeah, it's not spamming, it's chatting. It's totally good. This is what the whole idea with this show is. Because again, this is a little different from a lot of the other Star Wars shows that are out there. I mean, we talk about a little bit of news, current events, but it's really more like supposed to be a community discussion between you guys, us. It's like this one big, every Friday night, except for last week, but we're getting there. Every Friday night, we'd like to get together with you guys.
And just hang out.
And talk some Star Wars. That's why hopefully we get more people chatting on Twitch as well. All right, Ronaldo. Now that I think about it, maybe introducing the midi-chlorians in the original trilogy, maybe fans would have accepted them if they were part of the original explanation of the Force. Yeah.
I can see that.
And I agree with that. And in fact, I think that that's the reason why everybody got up in arms. But I'm glad you brought up the midi-chlorians, because here's my problem with it.
It's explaining. It's the fantasy thing.
Exactly.
Yep.
It's not even the fact that they didn't bring it up in the original trilogy, although you're right, if they had, people probably would have accepted it. The problem is you're moving away from the realm of fantasy and you're going into sci-fi at this point. Mm-hmm. If you look at the original explanation of the Force, perfect. It's a living force. It's around us. It binds us. It penetrates us. It's basically like, some people are more in tune with it than others, but it's kind of like it was a very kind of esoteric, almost vague.
Well, even like, even when Luke said it in Last Jedi, he's like, okay, what do you feel? I see, what do you see? And I see all this stuff. I see, the island, I see this. And he's like, all right, in between it all, it's like, that's balance. And he's just like, that power does not belong to just one person. That doesn't belong to the Jedi. It doesn't belong to anyone. It's just it. That's just
exactly
what it is.
And that's pretty much exactly. It's like, one of the things that I really enjoyed about The Last Jedi is all of Luke's little training nuggets.
I love that. Yeah, and
I wish we had seen more of that.
Yeah, he said like, okay, I see, life, and then I feel cold, I feel death, and it's like, well, powerful light, powerful darkness. Like that's just how life goes.
Duh.
Right.
I still like the whole like little palm branch thing that he was doing to her. That was
brilliant. Like whoever wrote that scene. That was awesome.
That was probably a Rian Johnson thing.
Reach out.
Yeah, right? Ronaldo also goes on to say, I think multiverse is more like a DC or Marvel concept. Like you basically said that earlier. Mm-hmm. I don't care if it works in Star Wars. Yeah, or I don't know if it works in Star Wars. I mean, that's again, this is why I think that when they introduced it in Rebels, I understood it in the context of that storyline, but I have to admit, I was a little, I'm like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this.
Well, like I said earlier, for those who missed it, it's back there like an hour ago or something. But, if you all have Disney Plus, I would implore you to watch the gallery. And there's I don't remember which episode it was, but Dave Filoni, who is one of the creators of the Clone Wars, he outlined pretty much what Star Wars is at its core. And he did it so masterfully and beautifully. And if everybody just kind of understood that concept, and then you did all your
including
dressing.
Kathleen Kennedy.
Right. And you dressed everything else is dressing, like the ships and the creatures and the animatronics and the technology and all that different stuff. Like all that stuff is great and we love it, but that all just supports the core. And if you understand what the core point of Star Wars is, that's all you really need. And I think if you all get a chance to watch that, you guys will be really, doing yourself a good service to really listen to one of the guys who's actually sat literally at the feet of George Lucas and understands exactly what Star Wars is all about.
That's true. Yeah, very, very true. Nilitube says, I know people don't want time travel since it is cliche, but I want the villains to use it. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much okay with just about anything in Star Wars as long as it's a good story, and as long as it doesn't, and this is where things get a little crazy with the fans, as long as it doesn't violate pretty much the whole Star Wars parameters.
It has to feel.
It has to feel like a Star Wars movie.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like even like and that was the cool thing because I remember like watching the Clone Wars. I'm literally at this point now where, the Dathomir witches. Like we had never heard about witches in Star Wars before, and it sounded like very Harry Potter-ish. And I'm just like, really? Now we got all these Dathomir witches and all this stuff, and it's like, okay, how is this factoring in? But you have all types of things in the galaxy, and so it's like,
well, but if you read any of the Legends books, there were Force witches in there. I think that's where Filoni got that concept. Mm-hmm. It may have even been Lucas. I'm not really sure like which one of them came up with that idea, but I'd be willing to bet money that whichever one of them did, it was based on the whole Force witches. I forgot what they were called. That were in quite a few of the Legends books, actually.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of this stuff was around. It just wasn't,
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't in the movies, and that's what I'm saying. Like, when you're expanding the universe and when you're expanding the canon and whatnot, like that's why I feel like in certain aspects, the Star Wars television, so to speak. So if we're talking about Kenobi or Cassian Andor, or you want to start doing some things revolving around the Jedi and Sith on Disney Plus, I think that's a great conduit to actually start bringing this stuff up. So when it comes into a movie, it's not like, huh? Like, where did that come from?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like, now it's like, okay, oh, well, you didn't know? We'll go watch this series and you'll see it. And they're like, oh, okay, I get it now. That would make more sense, especially for those who don't read the books. Because everybody's not going to read every single book, or everybody's not going to read every single comic.
Well, and that's why, I
so,
say this almost every show these days, but it's like if you introduce it in a movie, you got to explain it in a movie.
True.
All right, Ronaldo says, midi-chlorians were included. Maybe George Lucas's sequels would have been made. I mean, midi-chlorians were the main theme. Yeah, with George Lucas's version of the sequel trilogy, it was going to do these whole like little nano creatures, and
yeah,
it was going to be a little strange. But I mean, we'll see. Nilitube, Kathleen Kennedy used to be good, like Back in the Future, but then she got her SJW degree. Yeah. Here's the thing. She's a brilliant producer, but she's a terrible studio head.
Right.
And that's the problem. She's known to be one of the best producers in the business ever. And she's produced like a gazillion movies. That were with Steven Spielberg and everything else, but
yeah. I think her time is gone.
All right, well, what do we got next?
Is there a difference between light side and dark side powers?
I don't know. I don't think fundamentally, really.
And that's where I was going to go with it too. I don't think there's really much. I think there are some. You can say that
I think it's more intent.
Exactly.
Because if you're using Force Lightning, you're not using this with the intent of the whole Jedi.
Yeah, like what if I want to charge my phone? You know what I'm saying? I don't know. But no, I mean, like, I think.
But Luke did use it. Not in the actual movies, but in the whole legend stuff. And I think maybe even one of the canon books. I'm not sure. Or maybe it was a comic or something. But he did use it.
Yeah, I mean, like, for example, Force Choke. Like, you can use that. I think you can. It's an aggressive move, but I think if you use it for the right application or the right intent. So, like I said, when Anakin is trying to look for information from people, and it's like, okay, you're not coughing up the information, and I need it, and we're on a time crunch. I don't have time to sit here and go to the courts and do all this stuff. Like, look, somebody's going to end up dead if I don't get this information. Where is it? And it's like,
right.
Okay.
I mean, but and again, it's more the desperation to get what they need, and I mean, I think that this is the whole reason why. But I don't necessarily think that there's a fundamental difference between. Now, certainly, there are certain powers that are favored by the light side and the dark side.
Sure, definitely. I mean, because they always want to use the Force for knowledge and defense, never for attack. But I think. But I think sometimes you do have to. Sometimes you can't be so dogmatic in one particular ideal, and I think you have. I think you have to adapt to the situation. I think that's what Qui-Gon was like. Qui-Gon and Dooku are probably like one of the first ones to kind of. But I think Qui-Gon really was one of the ones who was really kind of at the forefront of that, along with Mace. Mace Windu, because of course we know he employed the dark side at times. Sure. But he was under control with it, and I think that's just because even they even banned a lot of lights like that. His lightsaber style was banned pretty much until you reach a certain part. Even being a master, you had to have had enough time being a master before we start teaching you this, because we need to make sure that you can control the dark side aspects. And like I said, I think that the dark side is there's nothing. I think we all have a little bit of dark in us. I think that makes us human, that makes us balanced individuals. And I think that's, like I said, I think that's the whole point of the Force, is that they were so dogmatic as far as like not using anything dark.
Well,
and
I mean,
and then of course,
and
the
again,
Sith,
I think it was still the intention though, because it was like there's certain things that they would do that power-wise I'm talking about, because that's what the whole conversation is
Right.
power.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I think there are certain things that require you to use an ability, just use the Force in itself, for more aggression than defense.
Mm-hmm.
But I think sometimes you do need to use. Sometimes you do need to be aggressive.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, I think that pretty much sums that up perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
But it was good to bring this up because I think you're right. I think a lot of times people really get sucked into the idea of that's a light side and that's a dark side power. And
Right. Like, okay, healing is light side, but
yeah.
like, well, no, I think you could.
Well, with healing, though, I think you would actually have to tap into certain lighter feeling. Because, again, it's all intent. It's all the emotion. It's all the stuff. A Sith is out to destroy. They're not. But Palpatine did heal Vader.
But that's because they were so far gone, though. It's like, and that's what I'm saying, like, each were on each at opposite ends of that spectrum.
But again, it goes to what you're saying, though, where it's more like it's really more like the intent and the emotion and all that behind it,
right,
than the actual power itself is
exactly.
light or dark.
Right.
All right, so what do we got next?
Next we have, why did Vader stop Luke from killing the Emperor?
Speaking of...
So what I'm referring to is the moment...
Yeah, oh, I know.
Okay.
We have it on the picture there.
Oh, yes.
And not to mention the fact that now this is interesting because I'm trying to remember. I actually read the whole Return of the Jedi novel, but it was a long time ago.
In a galaxy far, far away.
Yes. I don't quite recall why in the book they explained it, but I mean, I think that a lot of it has to do with the fact that first of all, your whole thing is coming from the fact if he wanted to destroy the Emperor so bad.
It's right there.
But see, you have to understand something about that scene. Some of it's coming back to me now. And also, Lucas's commentary, by the way, in Return of the Jedi explains some of this. Palpatine he knew Vader was going to defend him. He knew he was going to defend him, and it was almost like it wasn't the time. And Palpatine could have easily, probably had blocked Luke's attack. And if Vader had just not come to his aid, then Palpatine might have gotten suspicious and then tried to destroy him.
Yeah, but I think, and to that point, though, I think, one, that's what Palpatine wants. He wants his apprentice to kill him. I mean, that's what Sith do. That's part of what makes you a Sith Lord.
Well, the idea is it's like, when you could kill me, then you deserve the power. Then you deserve this place.
Mm-hmm.
But Palpatine was a little different, though, than a lot of the other Sith Lords. Because he seemed to be obsessed with going on. And this is even before, like, the whole Rise of Skywalker thing and all this other stuff. I mean, he basically, the whole concept of like his spirit going on and all that stuff, I mean, that was explored in a lot of the novels and everything like that. And, Ronaldo's backing that. If I remember correctly, in Rise of Skywalker novel, that scene was explained, I think. Yeah, I'm trying to remember if it was or not. It may have been.
I don't think so.
I don't know.
Because my whole thing is this. Like, if you're going to... Okay, so Vader made the proposal to Luke. We can destroy the Emperor. We can rule the galaxy as father and son. Okay. So this is your moment. Like, you're here. He's here. We're all here together. Look, like, Vader, you're pretty powerful. Luke has proven himself to be a pretty powerful individual. He's not like Last Jedi Luke, but he's still maybe...
Well, maybe together with Vader.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think the Emperor would have been able to hold off both of them, especially at that point.
Well, but if he hit Vader with Force Lightning, it would have ended him.
Vader would have been expecting it, though.
True.
It's not like he hasn't used it on him before. he's even made modifications to his suit so it wouldn't short circuit. So it's like,
like
it's not like, so it's not like he doesn't know. And it's like, okay, once again, Vader being so powerful and Luke being, and especially like, we're seeing like, okay, and granted, this wasn't George Lucas's original story, so I can't really use this, but it's canon for now. That, okay, if you got like a whole dyad in the Force between Rey and Kylo, like you got a father who's conceived of the Force, and then the son, it's like.
Again, I think a lot of this, though, Lucas, I know he had an I wish I can remember what it was. He had some sort of an explanation for it, but I think a lot of it is, again, it's
storytelling. Yeah. So, I mean, ultimately, I know that's what it boils down to.
I know,
it's a
but
story.
You had to bring it up.
Right.
That makes sense. But I think after all this,
yes,
I think it's time to wind down.
That's why we don't have wine. Have to bring that next time.
Exactly. It's time to clear your mind. That's right. This is where we answer some submitted questions. So, What do we got?
First question comes from Richard Beals. His question is, let's say Luke died fighting Vader on Bespin. If Leia was only the other hope, how would they get her trained in enough time with Obi-Wan dead and Yoda dying?
That's kind of the thing that's always been the big thing to me, is that they were always hinging all this stuff like on these and it's like they didn't act accordingly. It's it's sort of like if Luke is supposed to be the the hope of the galaxy or whatever, it's like you're being awfully cavalier about all this.
Right.
And it's the same thing with Leia. It's kind of like, okay, what you needed to do is you needed to be training both of them. So if something happens to Luke or he does something stupid or if he goes to the dark side, you could train up Leia. But again, I don't think they thought this through.
Definitely. I don't know. I mean, that's just.
People are hitting us with good questions this week.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, I mean, like, I've often wondered that too myself. Like, okay, because in Empire.
But again, I think it comes down to the fact that originally, and this goes into Nilatube's point, that they really weren't supposed to be brother and sister at first. Wasn't originally written that way.
Right.
That was something that came in somewhere in the middle of actually after Empire Strikes Back. So you have to fill in these plot holes somehow. And again, so this is another fundamental difference between fantasy and sci-fi. Sci-fi, you're supposed to think of all this stuff. Fantasy, you're supposed to let a lot of stuff go.
Right.
Fantasy is really more about the big picture. It's about the big themes. It's about the overarching thing, the myth, all this stuff. It's not supposed to be thought at a micro level.
Yeah.
The problem is that Star Wars is such a cool, vast universe that all of us fans love to think of it at a vast, big level or whatever. And it's sci-fi enough.
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, there's things where like I've watched like even in the Clone Wars. And, they're chasing somebody or someone's shooting at them and they're like, all right, how do we get out of this? And I'm like, just use the Force and yank them off the thing. Like,
right?
Like,
I mean, I thought that stupid, like the whole Mon Calamari versus War thing.
Yes.
It's like there are so many times where the Jedi could have just like used the Force to get out of these situations. Like that shark-headed dude.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, dude, you could have Force choked him. Come on.
Exactly.
How'd I digress? Before I get too hot-headed, what?
Here's the next question.
Right.
I want you overheating again.
Yeah, right?
Next question comes from Mario Heffler. The question is, how does Obi-Wan know that Vader is Anakin if when he last saw him, he was left to die?
Well, I think he can sense him.
Yeah.
I mean, he could sense him. And now... The thing that's interesting, though, is that even before any of this stuff, and again, this is why you need a little bit, they'll fill in all this stuff between episodes 3 and 4, but the really big stuff, which maybe we'll get in the Obi-Wan series, they don't touch. Like, he would say things like, oh, he's more machine now than man. It's like, well, you must have run into him.
That's
then.
what I'm saying. Like how did you, and
how did you know that?
And that's, I think, where his question is deriving from. Like, how does he know that Anakin is Vader?
I think that he
Vader's
either,
Anakin,
he could probably sense him. I mean, if he was anywhere in the vicinity, or if he just, because look, I mean, if Vader can choke you through a hologram,
but then again, wouldn't that, if he can sense him, that means Vader could sense Obi-Wan then.
Yeah, but I mean, unless who knows? Because remember, during the original trilogy, they were clouding the dark side. So I mean, there is that, but. I mean, I get it. Again, this is one of those, it's not making a whole lot of sense here.
Those tough plot points.
These difficult, plot points.
Yeah.
I don't know. But, yeah, I think that's just one of those things that, you have to pretty much take, again, a lot of the story has been built on over time. And I don't think Lucas ever imagined in a million gazillion years that it would become this thing, this cultural phenomenon that it has.
But wait a minute. I got an impossible answer for this.
Wow.
Now I'm thinking about it. So, yeah. So when
we're all waiting.
Sorry. So when Yoda and Obi-Wan went back to watch the security footage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, he made a mention to Obi-Wan. He said, your apprentice is consumed by Darth Vader. He is.
Well, it wasn't even that. I think they watched the security footage where he says, "Henceforth, you will be known as Darth Vader."
Right. Yeah.
So there you go.
So when you see Vader, when you hear the name Vader used all over the place.
It's not like Obi-Wan didn't know what he did to Anakin.
Yeah, exactly. So he's like, oh, well, he made it. So
yeah, he's probably thinking oh, it kind of sucks. Kind of wish I hadn't.
Should have just first pushed him into the lava.
Yeah, right. Maybe I should have helped him.
Finish the job, man.
Hey, you never know.
Yep. So, yeah, I think that's the answer.
Yeah, that could be. But, you guys, like I said, you're watching a rebroadcast. Leave the comments in the section or whatever. I don't know. I think that's going to do it for this week.
Yes, sir.
A little bit of a shorter show this week, guys.
Well, it's the holiday weekend.
Yeah, it is.
People, so.
For us in the United States here, it is 4th of July weekend, and, we're going to do it. But next week, we'll be back here. We'll be live at 8 p.m. as usual. Eastern Standard Time. I should probably bring that up because we do have people watching from all over the place.
Right.
So
poor Ronaldo.
Yeah, but hey, he always manages to come.
He always supports, man.
Ronaldo, man, we love you, dude. We're glad that you're here. We love your chats. Nillatube, thanks for joining us tonight as well. If anybody's watching us out there on Facebook and Twitch, which we know you are, maybe you just didn't chat tonight, but we really thank you guys for being with us as well. And till next week, I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.